Okay, lesson 301, saving data to the database. So let's create a new project. Spring initializer. We're going to call this lesson 301. And this time we're going to use slightly different dependencies. So as usual, we're going to get the web and the time leaf dependencies. But in addition to that, we're going to get dev tools. So under developer tools, click on Spring Boot dev tools. We're also going to select under SQL the JPA and H2 dependencies and click next. Click finish. Ooh, I've already created this one. I do not want to overwrite it. I'll call it B. And then let it do its thing. While it's resolving its dependencies, oh, it's already done. Okay, so of course we're going to create a class. Come in here to my package, say new Java class, and we're going to create a class called person. Oh, this is inside of, okay, that's fine. We're going to create a class called person. We're going to put an entity annotation on it. This will tell Spring Boot that this class is going to be a database table, and it'll create the code to input it into the database on its own automatically. And inside of here, notice we have additional annotations that we're using. We are using Java persistence, yes. So at ID and at generated value will tell Spring Boot that the ID field is the prime. This tells it that it's the primary key, and the generated value tells it it's an auto incremented field. So if you've played with that at all in MySQL, this is how you would do that in JPA. You right click on person and generate our getters and setters. Okay, so that's done. We're going to take a look at our application.properties file. Now notice that these files are in red on my machine. Notice that they're not underlined in red, they are red. What my system is telling me is that these files are important files that haven't been added to Git. It's not that they have errors, at least I don't think that it is. We're going to set our application properties and we'll go over those. The first one tells it that the H2 console is enabled. H2 console is kind of like is a console to the H2 database. We'll talk about how that works. Slash H2 console is the path that we will use to get to it. DDL auto equals create tells it that every time we run this program again, go and create the tables again. So basically it'll wipe out the tables every time that we run it so that we're not writing over ourselves. And the database URL is the URL that it'll use to connect. For right now, we don't really need to worry about how that works. Now, this is literally everything that we need to make this work, for at least what we're going to do so far. We have a class that's going to generate our table, and because we've set up our properties with H2 console, we have a way of accessing that table once we get there. So let's go ahead and run this. And while this is executing, it says started. If I pull up my browser, if I go to localhost 8080, it gives me an error because I don't have any endpoint. I don't even have a controller. However, if I go to H2 console, it'll give me this. This is why we put DevTools into our dependencies, is that it gives us this automatically. So you wouldn't use this in production, but let me go ahead and connect. But this gives us a way of accessing our data directly without having to write code in our database. So as we work with things, we can sit here and test what code is there so far. So select star from person. This is the person object over here. Notice ID, first name, last name. Those are those very same things that we created in our person object here. ID, first name, last name. It just did it for us automatically. And I can run this. Right now there's nothing in there. And if I wanted to import something in there, I could. If I wanted to test the data that my application was creating, take a look to see that the data was happening the way I wanted it to, real quick, I could do that as well. So this is the first step in our database chapter. There's more to come.